Hey everyone, it's Dr. NightStare. Glad you're here. Before we get into it, hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Quick question before we start. Where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? Alright, let's get settled. Get comfortable, let your body relax, and just take it easy. The sun burned the cracked earth, and the river ran thin. Our hunger grew with each passing day, a dull ache in every belly. Children cried themselves to sleep, their faces drawn and pale. The hunting parties returned with empty hands, the forest giving nothing. That was when they came. They walked into our camp without a sound, their skin smooth and pale like river stones, their eyes dark and knowing. They were not human, yet they stood on two legs and spoke with voices that flowed like water. They offered us sustenance, a way to make the land yield its bounty again. They promised their gifts would fill our stores and bring us peace. Chief Baron stood before them, his face etched with worry. He saw the suffering of our people, the empty granaries, the desperate eyes. He nodded slowly, a deep sigh escaping him. He told them they could stay, that they could serve us. I watched him make the pact, my stomach clenching. A cold dread settled in my heart. These smooth-skinned strangers brought no comfort, only a shiver of wrongness. I did not trust them. They called themselves the Monstrous, their voices smooth like polished stone. They did not wait. The very next morning, they began their work. Their pale skin rippled, bones shifted, and bodies stretched, reforming into massive oxen with broad, strong shoulders for plowing. Other Monstrous became swift, silent wolves, blending into the forest before anyone could follow. They worked tirelessly, without complaint, without pause. The fields, once barren and cracked, soon showed dark furrows, ready for seed. The Monstrous, now in human guise, knelt and planted with an uncanny speed, their movements precise and unwavering. Days became weeks, and the sprouts emerged, green and vibrant. The hunters returned with deer, boar, and fowl, their eyes wide with disbelief. The Monstrous had driven the game, cornered it, and made the hunt easy. Our granaries slowly began to fill. The children's laughter, once a forgotten sound, echoed through the camp again. Their bellies were full. The mothers smiled, relieved. The men, once burdened by endless failure, now looked to the Monstrous with respect, even gratitude. They saw the plenty these strangers brought, the life they restored. Trust grew like the crops, deep and firm in the soil of their gratitude. I watched them, a cold knot in my gut refusing to loosen. I saw the relief on my people's faces, the warmth returning to their homes. Yet, the Monstrous still brought me no peace. Their eyes remained dark, flat and empty, no matter the circumstance. They offered no joy when the harvests were bountiful, no sorrow when a child scraped a knee. They simply observed, impassive. Subtle shifts began to appear in their forms. When a Monstrous shifted back from an animal shape, sometimes a lingering trace remained. A hunter's hands might be just a little too large, his fingers tipped with slight, blunt claws. A farmer's stride might carry an unsettling, loping gait. Their human skin, once so smooth, started to look stretched, almost thin over their changing bones. They developed odd habits. They would sniff the air too deeply, their nostrils flaring. They would sometimes make a soft, guttural sound, like an animal settling in for the night, a sound too deep for a human throat. Their bodies, though they seemed to function perfectly, lacked true vitality. Their faces never flushed with effort, never showed the lines of a true smile or frown. Their movements were efficient, yes, but also strangely mechanical. They began to eat with a swift, predatory efficiency. Their teeth bared a moment too long when they tore meat. Their eyes, always those dark, dead eyes, never met ours truly. They just watched, always watching, as if trying to understand something deeply alien to them. They were like puppets, perfectly mimicking life, but missing the spark within. The harvest festival brought feasting, but no true joy for me. My gaze searched for any wrongness in the Munas moving among us. One Munas, who usually helped tend the communal fires, had disappeared from its post. A cold prickle ran down my spine. The chief's youngest wife, pregnant with her first child, had also not been seen for hours. Her absence felt wrong. I moved quietly away from the crowded celebration, slipping between the tents towards the edge of the camp where the Munas often slept in their strange, unmoving slumber. The air became colder as I walked. A smell, thick and coppery, reached me, making my stomach churn with fear. I found the chief's wife then, not sleeping, not breathing. Her body lay splayed on the ground, brutally torn open. A Munas knelt over her, its head buried deep in her opened belly. Its form was grotesque, neither human nor beast. Its skin stretched taut and gray over large bones. Sharp teeth protruded from a muzzle-like jaw. Its back was humped and ridged. Its hands ended in talons, not fingers. Its eyes, which always held that dead, watching flatness, now burned with a hungry red light. It tore flesh, swallowing with harsh guttural sounds, blood glistening on its distorted face. My throat closed with unspeakable terror. A strangled cry escaped my lips, a sound too loud in the sudden, absolute dread. The Munas stopped its devouring. It raised its head, dripping gore, and its burning eyes locked onto mine. Then it shrieked, a sound that tore the night, a sound of pure predator, not of anything that once helped us. That shriek was a signal. Across the village, the feasting Munas changed. Their smooth skins rippled and tore, their limbs elongated, their jaws unhinged. They became nightmare shapes of twisted bone and sinew, hulking things with too many teeth or too many eyes, forms barely held together by stretched, glistening skin. The transformation was swift and total. The true massacre began. They moved with terrifying speed, no longer servants, but monstrous hunters. Their roars filled the air, mingling with the screams of my people. They tore through the crowded village, seizing men, women, and children. Teeth ripped, claws shredded, bodies collapsed into bloody heaps. The Munas, now unmasked as ravenous beasts, decimated the innocent villagers. I saw Baron, our chief, dragged down by 3 of the monsters, his struggles ending in a choked cry. They slaughtered everyone they found, leaving behind only ripped flesh and broken bones. The village, once filled with laughter and the warmth of life, became a killing ground. I froze, watching the horror unfold, unable to move, unable to breathe. The sounds of screaming died away as the last guttural roars faded into the dark night. I remained frozen behind the overturned cart. My breath shallow, cold sweat covered my skin. The moon rose, casting long shadows across the devastation that was once our vibrant home. The village was gone. Only shattered tents and broken bodies remained, silent witnesses to the horror. Blood covered the ground, thick and dark, soaking into the earth where our hearths once burned. Every person I knew, every face I loved, lay still and lifeless. My family, my friends, our entire tribe had been taken in a single, brutal night. I waited until the last of the grotesque creatures scattered into the surrounding darkness. The air grew colder, biting at my exposed skin. I crept from my hiding place, my body stiff with shock and a paralyzing dread. I walked among the dead, my eyes tracing familiar features on faces now devoid of life. There was no one left alive. My tribe was utterly destroyed, completely annihilated. Nothing of our life remained. The monsters had vanished suddenly, leaving behind only ruin and the stench of death. I encountered other survivors on my lonely path, and they spoke of such horrors, these shape-shifting nightmares. They knew them by a name whispered in fear: skinwalkers. These people understood a chilling truth I now carried in my heart. The skinwalkers never truly die. They remain watchful and hungry in the wild places. They hunt with sharp teeth and tearing claws, and also with a deeper, more insidious power. Those who speak their name, those who dare to tell their story, unknowingly invite their return. The act of speaking their story draws their attention. Remembering their deeds makes them appear. The terror does not end with the physical slaughter. It persists in the fear of the spoken word. The skinwalkers feed on memory, on the dread passed from mouth to ear, forever drawing closer to the one who dares to name them. The morning air felt crisp as I stepped outside, ready for my usual commute, but the car refused to cooperate. I turned the ignition key, and the engine only responded with a weak, grinding sound instead of its usual starting noise. My stomach tightened immediately with the realization that the battery was dead. Again, a common occurrence that always brought a wave of intense frustration. There was no time for waiting on a tow truck, and I knew I needed a jump start quickly to make it to work. My gaze drifted reluctantly towards Mr. Henderson's house down the street, a place I rarely approached and where I seldom saw any signs of life. Asking him for help was an absolute last resort, a break in my carefully maintained routine. But today there was truly no other choice. I grabbed my keys again and started walking towards his driveway, feeling the unfamiliar pull of needing to cross that particular threshold. I approached Mr. Henderson's house and noticed the front door stood open slightly. My knuckles hovered over the wood for a moment, then I pushed the door inward slowly instead of knocking. The air inside pressed in immediately, hot and thick, a distinct change from the cool crispness of the morning outside. A dampness clung to my skin, raising goosebumps despite the unnatural heat that enveloped me. My eyes adjusted to the dim interior, trying to find Mr. Henderson or any indication of his presence. The living room stretched before me, filled with an assortment of furniture that appeared randomly gathered. A heavy, dark wood dresser stood beside a brightly upholstered modern couch, and an antique rocking chair rested near a glass coffee table. Nothing matched, and each piece felt out of place, contributing to a strange disharmony throughout the room. Every available surface, from shelves to tabletops and even large sections of the floor, displayed ceramic bowls. Each bowl was filled to the brim with water, some clear, some cloudy, positioned with no apparent order or purpose. A peculiar odor, a mix of stagnant water and something organic and decaying, permeated the oppressive atmosphere, making my stomach twist with a growing sense of unease. I called out Mr. Henderson's name, but my voice faded into the peculiar stillness that answered me. The air itself felt wrong, too heavy, too quiet for an inhabited dwelling, creating a distinct feeling of being watched in the unnatural warmth. The peculiar quiet was broken by a sharp, mechanical clap that resonated from directly upstairs. My head snapped up, my body tensing instantly. Before the sound completely faded, heavy, rapid footsteps began to descend, each step thudding against the floorboards above, and then moving quickly towards the staircase. The sound undeniably came down, growing louder with every hurried stride, a distinct rhythm of movement approaching my position. The approaching sound drove my feet into an immediate retreat towards the open front door. I stumbled backwards through the living room, my gaze fixed on the approach, tripping over one of the water bowls scattered across the floor. Cold water splashed over my shoes, soaking my socks instantly. The thudding steps were now on the main floor, moving quickly, gaining on me. I heard a loud, scraping sound from the direction of the kitchen, followed by another sharp clap, much closer this time, just around the corner. The sound was right there, too close, and it propelled me into a sprint. I scrambled through the doorway, my hands reaching out to brace myself against the frame. I burst out onto the porch, gasping for air that felt thin and cold after the heat inside. My hands fumbled for the doorknob, twisting it quickly, then yanking the heavy door shut behind me with all my strength. A powerful clap, louder than any before, immediately slammed against the thick wood of the door from the inside, rattling the entire frame. Another clap followed instantly, then another, a rapid sequence of strikes that vibrated through the door. The sound continued its consistent striking, a hard pounding against the barrier I had just managed to erect. I stood there, leaning against the closed door, my chest heaving, listening to the hard blows that struck the wood again and again, trapped inside the house. Matt, my oldest friend, always knew how to push my buttons. He leaned in close, his breath warm with the afternoon sun, whispering a dare about the stroller by the fountain. Mark and Chloe watched us, their grins widening, and a familiar pressure built inside my chest. I never backed down from a challenge, especially not from Matt. It felt like a small, harmless prank, a quick thrill in the park afternoon. The young parents sat on a bench a few feet away, completely engrossed in their conversation, their laughter echoing between the trees. The baby in the stroller had a candy bar clutched in its small fist, a splash of vibrant red against its pale blue blanket. I walked over with a casual stride, my heart beating a quick rhythm against my ribs. I reached into the stroller, my fingers brushing the soft skin of the baby's hand. Its eyes were dark and wide, suddenly focused on mine. There was no infantile curiosity, no hint of a pending cry, just an unblinking gaze that held an unsettling clarity. A shiver ran down my spine, but I ignored it, grabbing the candy bar. The wrapper crinkled, making a loud sound in the quiet park. The baby did not react, its expression unchanged, its dark eyes following me without moving as I hurried back towards my friends, the stolen chocolate feeling warm in my grip. I returned to my friends, the candy bar held in my hand. Matt grabbed it, a triumphant smirk on his face. Before he could tear the wrapper, a voice spoke into my head. The sound vibrated inside me, through my bones, demanding, "Return what is mine." It was a chilling command. I froze, my muscles locking. A chill spread through me, making my skin prickle. Matt looked at me, confused by my sudden stillness, then shrugged. He began to peel the wrapper, his fingers tearing at the red paper. "What's wrong with you?" he asked, but his words did not register properly. I did not hear him. The voice came again. Its presence intensified around me, a tightening pressure in the air, though my friends seemed oblivious. They just stood there, their laughter light and carefree. "Put it back. You will regret this." Chloe and Mark continued to joke, unaware of the demand that echoed only within my skull. I felt a crushing dread. My hands began shaking. I saw the chocolate rectangle open in Matt's hand, exposed to the sun. The sight filled me with nausea. I could not let them eat it. I could not eat it myself. A terror filled me when I looked at the candy, a revulsion that tightened my chest. My throat felt dry and tight. The candy bar sat exposed in Matt's hand, a dark block against the bright park air. I felt sick looking at it. "I am not eating that," I said, my voice thin, hardly my own. Matt laughed, oblivious to the terror that still echoed within me. Chloe reached out, breaking a piece off the chocolate, and popped it into her mouth, chewing slowly. Matt followed, taking a large bite himself, a smudge of brown appearing on his cheek. Mark watched them, then looked at me, a question in his eyes. I shook my head vigorously. The air around us felt still, cold, despite the warm sun. The sweet smell of the chocolate was suddenly revolting. My friends finished the candy, their laughter returning. their pranks forgotten in the pleasure of the sweet taste. They saw nothing wrong. They heard nothing. I stood there, utterly alone in my dread. We parted ways soon after, the park feeling menacing now. I walked home, every shadow seeming to whisper the voice's warning. My phone rang late that night. It was the police. They found Matt. They found Chloe. I raced to the address they gave me, a small deserted warehouse on the edge of town, a place we sometimes used for skateboarding. The flashing blue and red lights cut through the darkness. A chill wind swept past me as I pushed through the crime scene tape. The first officer tried to stop me, but I ignored him, driven by a terrible premonition. Inside the warehouse, the scene was a nightmare. Matt lay on the cold concrete floor, a grotesque tableau. His body was torn apart, limbs separated cleanly from the torso, lying scattered around him like abandoned dolls. His face was frozen in a scream, his eyes wide with a terror that clawed at my own throat. Blood, dark and thick, painted the floor in stark, impossible patterns. Chloe was not far, her body similarly ravaged, her head separated from her neck, her hands placed unnaturally far from her arms. No weapon was visible, no struggle evident, just the brutal, precise dismemberment. It was as if some unseen force had simply pulled them apart. The air itself seemed to vibrate with a lingering violence. The officers moved around me like ghosts, their faces pale, their hushed voices barely breaking the sickening silence. I was the only one who stood untouched, unharmed. The sole survivor. A wave of nausea swept over me, and I sank to my knees, the stolen candy bar, uneaten and intact, a leaden weight in my mind, a tormenting reminder of my terrible choice. The dare, the baby's eyes, the voice, and the horrific cost. The guilt was a physical blow, crushing me under its sudden, unbearable weight. The guilt consumed me. Days blurred into police questions and sleepless nights. I knew I had to return. I needed to see it again, to understand what happened. The warehouse stood stark under a gray sky. No flashing lights remained, only the raw concrete and the lingering scent of copper and decay. I stepped past the taped-off perimeter, my heart beating in my chest. The officers had gone, yet the horror remained. I walked deeper into the large space. My gaze fell upon a small form in the center of the concrete floor where Matt's body had been, and it was a stroller with the same blue blanket draped over it. My breath caught in my throat. I approached with slow steps. The baby sat upright, its dark, wide eyes fixed on me, just as they had been in the park. It held a candy bar in its small hand, a red wrapper identical to the one I had stolen. A chill ran through my body, a terror deeper than any I had felt before. The baby's lips stretched wide, a slow, deliberate movement forming a knowing, malevolent grin. My body grew cold. The impossible truth struck me. This creature, this thing, it had waited for me. It had orchestrated everything. The deaths of my friends were a calculated, terrifying display of power, a punishment for a stolen treat. The baby's gaze never left me, its dark eyes now glinting with an ancient, predatory intelligence. I was guilty, and I was trapped in a nightmare of my own making, forever bound to the malevolent will of a creature that looked like an infant, but held power beyond my comprehension. The candy bar, with its red wrapper, was a sign of my eternal damnation. I could never escape. You must remember this. It is critical you grasp what I'm saying. This is my 8th attempt to reach you, to reach anyone, because humanity's time is almost gone. You recall the Antarctic drill, don't you? That massive international effort, the fleet of icebreakers, the live feeds showing scientists probing deep into the ancient ice. Everyone watched it unfold. It was a global spectacle, a moment shared by countless people. But what came afterward? Do you recall the ships returning weeks later? The news broadcasts showed images of the vessels, their decks covered with dark gore. You remember the frantic reports about a missing scientist, Dr. Eris Thorne. He disappeared during the expedition's final days. And the entity, did you see it? Just a moment. A fleeting image on one of the archived videos, something immense on the main deck of the Aurora Borealis before the feed cut. It was all there. Then it disappeared. Every detail of those terrible events ceased to exist in your mind, replaced by a perfect history where everyone came home safe, where nothing went wrong. They erased it from your memory. They erase it from everyone's memory. You need to remember this truth now. You think the Antarctic incident was an isolated event, a strange blip they covered up. No, that was merely a symptom. The entities operate in two distinct stages. The first stage consists of larval forms. These are microscopic. They burrow into living tissue, unseen, unheard. Once inside, they begin to consume. They are parasites, growing larger, devouring organs from within. The process causes agonizing death. Imagine your insides being slowly eaten away, piece by piece, while you remain fully conscious. You scream and writhe. Your body contorts in unbearable torment. Your loved ones, your family in the next room, they hear nothing. Not a sound escapes the walls of your personal agony. Your dying thrashings are not heard by them. They only register a sudden, quiet illness or a peaceful passing. Then you are gone, your body an empty husk, your existence wiped clean. This is how the larval forms feed and grow. Then there are the adults. These are the ones responsible for what happened after the Aurora Borealis returned. The adult entities possess a terrifying ability. They manipulate collective memory. They do not just erase individual memories, they rewrite the shared reality of humanity. When a major event occurs, something horrific like a city block collapsing or 100 people vanishing, the adult entities simply edit it out. The destruction never happened, and the people never existed. They just cease to be in the collective mind. There is no news report, no grieving family, no search party, nothing. The world moves on, oblivious to the absence of something terrible. This leaves an unsettling normalcy behind. You might feel a subtle unease, a sense that something is missing, but you cannot pinpoint it. A city park might suddenly appear where a hospital once stood, and you will accept it without question. A relative you saw just yesterday could be gone, their room empty, and your mind will create a reason for their absence, or simply forget they ever existed. These are deliberate removals, performed on the very fabric of our shared truth. They remove the horror and the trauma, but they leave behind the scars of unremembered suffering. This is their pervasive control. This is the escalating threat. I possess an inexplicable immunity. My mind retains the true history, impervious to their manipulations. I navigate their fabricated world by constantly recalling the facts, the faces, the places they have erased. I see the phantom limb of reality where a city park now stands, knowing a hospital once occupied that space. My defense is a stubborn adherence to truth, never allowing their false narratives to root within me. I am the only one aware. This unique state isolates me completely. Every person I encounter lives in a world of easy fictions. Their smiles are genuine, their concerns trivial, all built upon a foundation of hidden horrors. I am a lone voice, shouting into a void that only I perceive. I hold the forgotten truth. My desperate mission is to tear down this illusion, to ignite a spark of memory in just one mind. That spark could grow into understanding, exposing the lies before humanity becomes consumed by these parasites. I broadcast these messages, these fragments of forgotten truth, again and again. Each time, I wonder why they allow me to continue. Perhaps my immunity is a rare flaw they have not yet learned to exploit, an oversight in their vast control. Perhaps they are so consumed with their subtle, pervasive editing that a single, persistent voice registers as harmless static. They might believe I am an isolated anomaly, an inconsequential disturbance in their carefully crafted silence. They may not yet understand the danger I represent, or perhaps they simply do not care, confident in their ultimate victory. But I am here, still fighting. I will continue to speak this truth, to reveal their deception. I will repeat this message, every single word, until someone remembers. You must grasp this reality. You must break free from the false reality they have constructed. You must hear me, and you must contact me. Our survival depends on it. Cracking my fingers and toes was a lifelong habit, a constant comfort. My mother always warned about bad luck and weak bones, but I ignored her words. The gentle pops from my joints felt good. An irresistible urge for the satisfying release emerged whenever I sat idle or felt nervous. That afternoon, my mother caught me twisting my fingers, her admonishment immediate. Later, in the darkness of my bed, I secretly let my fingers and toes perform their pops. Each tiny crack brought a deep satisfaction, and I drifted into sleep, entirely content. I woke the next morning to an excruciating pain and a pervasive numbness in my fingers and toes, making each digit feel heavy and wrong. My mother rushed me to the emergency room, where the doctor confirmed all my fingers and toes were broken. The initial shock soon gave way to a crushing remorse, and I immediately promised my mother I would abandon the habit forever. After 6 months of recovery, the physical wounds had completely healed. The psychological craving for that specific crack, however, began to consume me once more, particularly when I saw my friends casually popping their own knuckles. Overwhelmed by the desire, I started cracking them in secret, rationalizing that the previous injury was likely a freak accident, completely unrelated to my lifelong habit. I fell into a deep sleep. Persistent, disembodied finger-cracking sounds began to penetrate my rest. I dismissed the noise as residual thoughts. A parched throat eventually forced me awake, and I needed water. I walked barefoot into the dark kitchen. My foot struck something on the floor that felt soft and yielding. My breath hitched when I registered the objects, several pale, severed fingers scattered across the cool linoleum. They lay still. A gruesome trail of these human digits led from the kitchen into the dim living room. My heart beat fast and hard. I followed the horrific path, my steps cautious as I searched for the light switch near the living room entrance. My fingers fumbled before I flicked the switch up. The room flooded with stark light, and my mind struggled to comprehend what was before my eyes. A grotesque humanoid figure stood in the living room, its entire body, its face, and its hair composed entirely of fingers of varying sizes. Terror paralyzed me. I watched as the creature turned slowly. Piercing red eyes appeared amidst the mass of digits on its face. They were its only discernible features. I tried to flee. My own fingers and toes spontaneously broke again, sending me to the floor. The creature loomed, its finger face inches from mine. The lights flickered off and on, plunging the horrifying encounter into an ambiguous, chilling darkness. The diamond caught the evening light as I opened the small box, my heart pounding against my ribs. Her gasp was sharp, a sound of pure delight. Then she saw me kneeling there. Her smile shone, and she spoke the single word I longed to hear. I slid the cool metal onto her finger, sealing our future with a kiss. We held each other close for a long moment, the world narrowing to just us two in shared happiness. She pulled back, her gaze falling to a small piece of yellowed paper lying flat on the polished table beside the champagne flutes. The note had not been there a moment ago. It was old, crinkled at the edges, and written in faded ink were two simple words: "I'm back." A sudden chill swept into the room, and a shiver ran through her body. Her breath hitched, her hand flew to her mouth, covering a gasp, and her eyes, still brimming with tears of joy, widened with terror. She picked up the note with trembling fingers, her knuckles white. I reached for her, concerned, asking what had happened, but she just shook her head, unable to speak, her gaze fixed on the ancient paper. Her voice came out as a strained whisper. She spoke of her childhood bedroom, of a deep darkness within her closet door that watched her during those lonely nights. She called it an entity, a presence that spoke in whispers only she could hear. It had told her it would return on the day she became engaged, a specific promise made long ago. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly as she began to sob, her body shaking. This was a nightmare, I told her, a cruel memory from a child's imagination. Someone must have played a terrible prank, I reasoned, placing the note there to scare her. She pulled back, her eyes pleading with me to understand, insisting the entity was real, that its words were truth. I shook my head, trying to process her words, yet my mind refused such an impossible claim. Her childhood trauma was too raw, too intense to dismiss, but the idea of a monster from a closet, appearing with a note, was something from a storybook. I tried to reassure her, explaining that real threats did not exist in such forms, and this note was an old piece of paper. Weeks passed, then months followed, and the joy of our engagement faded into a growing tension. My fiancée's paranoia deepened with each passing day. She began pointing out small disturbances in the house, claiming a cupboard door she was sure she had closed stood ajar, or a cold draft lingered in the hallway for no reason. She would wake me in the middle of the night, convinced she heard footsteps moving through the house, but I heard only the old settling sounds of the structure. I always found the doors locked, the windows secured, and the rooms empty. I tried to rationalize each incident, telling her I must have left the cupboard open, or the old house simply had drafts, or the floorboards groaned under their own weight. Her anxiety became a constant presence in our home. The wedding planner's calls went unanswered, the guest list remained untouched, and she would simply stare blankly at fabric swatches. Our once lively discussions about our future together dwindled into strained silence. My patience wore thin as the neglect of our wedding plans grew, and I felt a deep frustration with her constant fear. The radiant woman I had proposed to seemed to disappear, replaced by someone always looking over her shoulder. Her once sparkling eyes held a haunted look. A widening rift formed between us, a space filled with her unspoken terrors and my inability to truly understand them. I started sleeping on the couch more often, seeking a quiet place away from her restless nights and whispered claims. Each passing week, I found myself questioning our future, wondering if our relationship could survive this relentless erosion. The thought of spending my life with this pervasive fear began to plant insidious seeds of doubt in my mind. I loved her, but this constant dread was slowly consuming everything we had built. Months of unrelenting tension, her quiet terror, and my own persistent doubts finally fractured my resolve. We stood in the living room, the air thick with unresolved fear. My patience had vanished, consumed by the endless struggle. "I cannot live like this anymore," I stated, the words leaving my mouth with a harsh finality. "This constant fear is destroying us. Our engagement is over." Her eyes, wide and terrified, locked onto a space directly behind my head. A gasp tore from her throat. She whispered, "No, you cannot," it said, It said it takes what is ours if you leave. Then her voice changed, deepening, resonating with a sound not her own. She spoke the ancient words, the vow broken, the bond severed. Darkness takes its claim. It waits when love ends. A cold dread tightened around my heart, silencing my protests. I began to turn, a question forming on my tongue, but before I could complete the movement, a massive force slammed into my back. Pain exploded through my chest, a searing rip that stole my breath. My legs buckled immediately, and I collapsed to the floor, my vision darkening around the edges. A cold, damp smell of earth filled my nose, mixed with something acrid, something metallic. My eyes struggled to focus on her face, contorted not with terror now, but a deep sorrow that understood everything. The room swam before me, a dizzying blur. Every chilling whisper she had recounted, every impossible claim, every single word of her childhood nightmare suddenly blazed with undeniable truth. It was all real. My eyes opened to a dull light filtering through a dense tangle of neglected leaves. I did not recognize the overgrown garden, nor did I know how I came to be standing among its sprawling weeds. A chill moved through the morning air. Weeds grew around my knees, their dry stems scratching my skin. Liam should have been safe in his bed, not alone and hurt. His small hand slipping from the banister still played in my mind, a constant loop of fear and regret. Guilt pressed on my chest, a cold, heavy burden. I needed to be with him, to whisper comfort, but I stood here, unable to move away from this strange place. A house stood at the garden's far edge. Its paint peeled from the wood. Its windows were blank and dark. A strong, persistent pull urged me toward the dilapidated structure. I moved slowly, drawn by a clear purpose I could not name. Voices called my name as I neared the peeling front door, first sounding like my own, then like my mother's, then like my husband's. A man waited in the doorway, his eyes burning red in the dim light. He reached out a hand to me, and I took it without thinking. He led me gently across the threshold and into the house. A tall, bone-thin figure stood further down the hall, its face shadowed and its gaze fixed on me with an intense watchfulness. A coldness spread through my body as we passed it, a heavy knot tightening in my stomach. The walls of the house twisted inward, and the floorboards buckled under my feet. The ceiling sagged low over our heads. This was not my home. Nothing here was recognizable. Every doorway ahead seemed to stretch and then shrink before my eyes, further disorienting me. I needed to find Liam. His name formed silently on my lips. I followed the man, desperate to reach Liam. His steps were light, his body lean. When he turned his head slightly, I saw his profile, smooth and unburdened by any visible worries. His features held a deep, unsettling familiarity I could not place, an identity just beyond my grasp. A thin, jagged scar cut a stark line from his left temple down to the edge of his eye. The hallway ahead began to constrict, the walls pressing inward, growing closer with each step we took. The passage ended at a single closed door, plain and wooden. I knew Liam was behind it, and I felt his presence radiating through the wood. I had to see him. I reached out a trembling hand toward the door. My trembling hand reached toward the door. Just before my fingers touched the wood, my vision blurred. The man's features shifted, transforming before my eyes. The scar vanished. His face, no longer distant, became Liam's face. Tears tracked clean paths down his cheeks. Tears tracked clean paths down his cheeks. "Mom," he whispered, his voice cracking. "It is me. It is—" He gripped my hand. His touch was warm and real. "I am all right, Mom. The accident was not your fault. I am well." He continued speaking, his voice soft but urgent. You had a heart attack. It happened when I fell. It was not your fault. A cold sensation spread through my body. Icy hands pressed against my skin. My thoughts began to fray, slipping away. His face wavered before my eyes. He spoke more words, but they became distant, meaningless sounds. The coldness deepened inside me. The icy hands pressed harder. I could not feel my own body. Liam's voice faded. His face became indistinct. Everything around me darkened. I held a small photo in my left hand. Amelia's smile gleamed back at me from the glossy surface. Her curls were full. I looked at the girl in the chair. My right hand, holding a comb, paused over her still head. This was not right. The photo showed bright, full locks. The hair before me lay flat, resisting all my efforts. A sigh escaped me. I had tried this section 5 times. Each time the strand fell limp. I placed the photograph beside the makeup palette. The vibrant colors lay there. I picked up a small brush. Her face needed warmth. I dabbed at the blush. A faint rose dusted her cheek. This was not the lively flush I remembered. The picture displayed a child beaming with natural life. I wanted that same glow for her now. I wanted everything perfect. I wanted her to look exactly as she had. My fingers trembled as I smoothed a loose strand from her forehead. She did not move. Her eyes remained closed. Her stillness was becoming a problem. I needed her to participate. Just a tilt of the head would help. I adjusted my grip on the brush. The blush needed more. I applied another layer, then another. It did not match. My jaw tightened. This was taking too long. This was not working. I could not achieve the image from the photo. I pressed my lips together. I had to get this right. I simply had to. I focused on the tiny flyaway hairs near her temples. They would not stay down. I tried hairspray, then gel, then hairspray again. Each attempt left a sticky residue and the hairs sprang back up. My breath hitched. This was supposed to be easy. I glanced at the clock on the dresser. Time was ticking away. I could feel the pressure building inside my chest. This one thing, this small detail, felt monumental. Amelia just sat there. She did not stir. Her lack of movement, once helpful, now felt like a refusal. I wanted to scream in frustration. I had to recreate that vibrant image. I had to. The clock on the dresser seemed to race. Minutes dissolved too quickly. My chest tightened with each passing second. The vibrant image from the photograph taunted me, a stark reminder of my failure. I wanted to rewind time, to start over with a fresh canvas. I wanted to erase these attempts, these clumsy strokes that only made things worse. I looked at Amelia's face. The blush I had applied now looked too bright, a garish, artificially pink stain. It mocked the natural warmth I craved. I tried to blend it, to soften the edges, but it clung to her skin, resisting every effort. The more I worked, the more pronounced it became. A wave of desperation washed over me. This was wrong. All of it felt wrong. I could not get it right. My hand trembled as I picked up a different brush, a smaller one, hoping it would offer more control. I needed to fix this, to make her look like herself again. But she simply lay there, an inert doll, offering no resistance, no complaint, yet also no cooperation. Her unyielding stillness grated on my nerves. I needed her to move, to react, to help me make her perfect. Her closed eyes remained closed, her lips unparted. The strands of hair around her temples still defied me. They sprang back each time, refusing to settle. It was a battle I was losing. I imagined tearing it all out, starting completely from scratch. The thought made my stomach clench. I pressed my fingers to my temples, trying to calm the frantic beating in my chest. I had to focus. I had to achieve the perfect image. The time was slipping away too fast. My breath hitched. I needed more time. A sudden, sharp ring startled me. The phone on the small table vibrated, its insistent sound slicing through the strained quiet of the room. I reached for the phone, my fingers brushing against the cool metal. The display showed Eternal Serenity Funeral Home. A professional calm settled over me, a familiar shift into work mode. I answered. "Chelsea speaking," I said, my voice steady and practiced. The gentle voice on the other end confirmed the details for the Jensen viewing. "Amelia Jensen, 3 o'clock, the voice stated. "Is everything proceeding as planned?" My gaze flickered to the girl in the chair. Amelia. My Amelia. Her closed eyes held no sleep. Her stillness was not patience. It was permanent. The artificially pink blush I had agonized over now made brutal sense. It was not a lack of natural flush I fought against. It was the absence of life. My hands, still holding the comb and brush, trembled with a horrifying realization. This was not a picture day struggle. This was my work. This was my calling. I was a mortician. I prepared bodies for their final goodbyes. The body before me, the still form I had labored over trying to recreate a memory from a photo, was my own child. My heart seized in my chest. Amelia. She was gone. I was making her beautiful for others to say farewell. My breath hitched. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to speak. "Everything is proceeding as planned," I whispered into the phone, the words feeling dry and heavy.